When Adolf Hitler came to power in 1933, Germany was in the depths of economic catastrophe. The Great Depression had devastated the nation, unemployment exceeded 6 million people, and the Treaty of Versailles imposed crippling war reparations. The Weimar Republic's economy had collapsed, hyperinflation had destroyed savings, and industrial production had plummeted. Yet within just 6 years, Nazi Germany had constructed one of the most formidable military machines in history. This remarkable transformation raises a crucial historical question: how did Hitler finance massive rearmament when Germany appeared financially bankrupt? The economic situation Hitler inherited. To understand Hitler's funding mechanisms, we must first appreciate the severity of Germany's economic crisis. The Treaty of Versailles had demanded enormous reparations payments, territorial losses reduced Germany's industrial capacity, and the global economic depression hit Germany particularly hard. Banks failed, businesses closed, and the middle class saw their savings evaporated by inflation. The Weimar government struggled with massive unemployment and social unrest. Hitler promised economic recovery and national restoration, but conventional economic wisdom suggested Germany lacked the resources for both domestic recovery and military expansion. Traditional funding methods, raising taxes, borrowing from international markets, or drawing on gold reserves, were largely unavailable. Germany's creditworthiness was destroyed, foreign investors were wary, and the population could barely afford basic necessities, let alone higher taxes. The Mayfair Bills, financial innovation and deception. Hitler's economics minister, Hjalmar Schacht, devised an ingenious but ultimately unsustainable solution: the Mayfair Bills scheme. This system created a shadow economy that allowed massive military spending while concealing it from both domestic and international observers. The Metallurgische Forschungsgesellschaft, MEFO, was established as a dummy corporation in 1934. This entity issued promissory notes, Mayfair bills, that functioned as a parallel currency. When the government wanted to purchase military equipment, it paid contractors with these bills rather than cash. Contractors could use Mayfair bills to pay suppliers, or they could redeem them at the Reichsbank for cash, with the bills bearing interest until redemption. This system worked brilliantly as a short-term strategy. It allowed unlimited government spending without appearing in official budgets, avoided immediate inflation by delaying monetary creation, and kept the rearmament program hidden from foreign powers who might have intervened. Between 1934 and 1938, Mayfair bills financed approximately 12 billion Reichsmarks of military spending, roughly half of Germany's rearmament costs during this period. However, the scheme had a fatal flaw: the bills would eventually need to be redeemed. Schacht understood this system could only work for a limited time, perhaps 5 years, before the accumulated debt would trigger economic collapse. This ticking financial time bomb would later influence Hitler's aggressive foreign policy timeline. Plunder and confiscation, exploiting victims. Nazi Germany supplemented creative financing with outright theft on an unprecedented scale. The regime systematically confiscated wealth from Jewish citizens, political opponents, and other targeted groups. The Aryanization program seized Jewish businesses, properties, and assets, transferring enormous wealth to the state and loyal Nazi supporters. The scale of this theft was staggering. Jewish property worth billions of Reichsmarks was confiscated through legal mechanisms, forced sales at below market prices, and outright seizure. Insurance policies, bank accounts, real estate, businesses, art collections, and personal possessions were all systematically stolen. This provided immediate funding for military expansion while also eliminating potential opposition from wealthy Jewish industrialists and financiers. Following the annexation of Austria in 1938 and the occupation of Czechoslovakia in 1939, Germany seized the gold reserves, industrial capacity, and financial assets of these nations. The Austrian National Bank's gold reserves alone provided significant financing, while Czechoslovakia's Škoda Works became a major arms manufacturer for the Wehrmacht. Autarky and resource control. Hitler's economic strategy emphasized autarky, economic self-sufficiency, which shaped both domestic policy and military planning. The four-year plan, announced in 1936, aimed to prepare Germany for war by developing synthetic substitutes for imported materials and reorganizing the economy for military production. Germany invested heavily in synthetic fuel production, creating gasoline and diesel from coal through the Fischer-Tropsch process. While expensive and inefficient compared to petroleum, this technology reduced dependence on foreign oil imports. Similarly, synthetic rubber production freed Germany from reliance on imported natural rubber. These programs required enormous capital investment but aligned with the autarkic vision of a self-sufficient war economy. The regime also implemented strict controls on foreign exchange, rationed imports, and directed all economic activity toward rearmament. Businesses faced pressure to convert civilian production to military goods, and the government allocated raw materials according to military priorities rather than market mechanisms. Labor exploitation and reduced living standards. German rearmament came at a severe cost to civilian living standards. The Nazi regime suppressed labor unions, froze wages, and directed workers toward armaments production. Consumption was restricted through rationing, import limitations, and prioritization of military over civilian goods. The policy of guns before butter meant Germans experienced declining quality of life even as national power grew. Consumer goods became scarce, food variety decreased, and prices rose despite wage controls. The regime compensated through propaganda emphasizing national greatness, promises of future prosperity, and scapegoating of internal and external enemies. Additionally, the regime exploited forced labor, initially from concentration camps and later from occupied territories. This provided essentially free labor for military production and infrastructure projects, reducing costs while terrorizing opposition. Deficit spending and future plunder. Ultimately, Nazi economic policy rested on a gamble that military conquest would provide the resources to pay for rearmament. Hitler and his economic advisors understood the system was unsustainable without expansion. The Mayfo bills would come due, debt would overwhelm the economy, and the autarkic system couldn't provide everything needed for modern warfare. This created a perverse incentive for aggressive expansion. War wasn't just ideological preference, it became economic necessity. The conquest of Poland, France, and other nations provided plundered wealth, industrial resources, and slave labor that temporarily sustained the system. Each conquest brought gold reserves, raw materials, industrial equipment, and exploitable populations. However, this created an ever-expanding need for more conquest. As military operations consumed resources faster than plunder could replace them, Germany needed ever larger victories. The invasion of the Soviet Union represented the ultimate gamble, seizing the vast resources of the East to sustain the Nazi Empire permanently. Conclusion: an economy built on sand. Hitler funded German rearmament through a combination of financial innovation, systematic theft, resource control, labor exploitation, and deficit spending premised on future conquest. The Mayfo bills created artificial purchasing power, confiscation of Jewish and occupied territories' wealth provided liquid assets, autarkic policies reduced foreign dependency, and reduced living standards freed resources for military use. Yet this system was inherently unstable and unsustainable. It required continuous expansion to avoid collapse, creating a direct link between Nazi economic policy and aggressive warfare. When German conquest finally halted and reversed, the economic foundations crumbled. The Third Reich's economic miracle was built on sand, on theft, debt, and the promise of future plunder. Understanding how Hitler funded rearmament reveals important lessons about the relationship between economics and aggression, the dangers of deficit financing without productive foundation, and how totalitarian regimes can temporarily overcome economic constraints through coercion and theft. It also demonstrates that Germany's military power, impressive as it appeared, rested on fundamentally unstable economic foundations that made catastrophic collapse inevitable once expansion ceased.